So the internet says we're live. And I'll transition me over. Grab you.
The music.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the music we used on the other podcast I do, but we switched. All right, so here
Nice.
we are on the internet.
All right, great.
So I'll explain this show because I've done one so far with a college buddy, and I've got another podcast that's more kind of current events, politics, that kind of thing oriented. But I wanted to do something that was for, and I really got particularly interested in it, for people, Facebook, Instagram, whoever you, the guest and or I have subscribers to see, like, not just a still on Facebook and a little, written post, but actually see people real time in what they're doing. And I thought of a handful of people, and you were one of my first two choices to have on the show. Yeah, well, and I'll tell you why. Two reasons. One is, and I don't pay tons of attention to Facebook, but it looked as though you shifted gears and did something career-wise that you really wanted to do rather than just stay on. I think you had kind of a corporate job, might even have been automotive. And now you're a chiropractor, right?
My husband's a chiropractor.
Okay.
And we run our business together. So I'm the CEO, I run the business, and he's the chiropractor. And then I also do health coaching.
Yeah, and that was the thing that got me particularly interested in was the health coaching. Your posts on Facebook are very upbeat and kind of focus on trying to live a better life and are very upbeat. And I told you about that poem, and I had forgotten the details, but it turns out you wrote it on the plane, which is in the poem, on the way to our 30th class reunion for North Farmington. And I'll tell you, I pulled that up. When you told me what the title was, I searched it on Facebook, and I found it. And I was going to read it, but that poem, it's kind of a poem, it's kind of an essay in a poem form. And every time I read it out loud, because if I read something that's lengthy, I want to have practiced it, I would start to cry. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that on the internet. No way, NFW. So maybe after this, you might repost it, because I thought that was really, really revealing. And there's some personal stuff in there that you reference, but don't explain, which doesn't matter. But that thing really, really, really resonated to me. It's something shy of a few details that I could have written about myself. And I just thought it was, and you really left it out there. I thought it was like a super brave, revealing, humble thing to share. And a lot of people don't have the guts to do that. And that thing just really struck me. So that's, what, like 6 or 7 years ago now?
Which is crazy, right?
Is that right?
Well, we graduated in 84, so
yeah, 6 years ago.
2014. Crazy how time flies.
And when you and I spoke, I swear to God, I thought I read it 2-3 years ago. So that's wild.
That is wild. I had to go back and find what it was that you were referencing, and went back, and luckily through Facebook, I could find the poem. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, it's up there. So I got a tequila, you got a beer. Let's toast the podcast and
Cheers.
Get going. Cheers. And are you in Texas? Is that right?
I am. Fort Worth, Texas.
So yeah. I now own a house in Kendallwood, believe it or not.
Nice.
Nice. And when I had been living in Milford for a while, got a job in right in kind of the industrial mecca of Detroit, and the commute was killing me. So I said, screw this. And all my friends this was kind of a good hub. People were in Novi, Northville, Farmington Hills, Birmingham, Royal Oak. And I just kind of wanted to move home. So my mom was a realtor at the time, and she found this house, and um, a man and his wife brought in their aging mother and put this totally accessible wing on it, and it was
Oh,
like
nice.
move in ready for me. So
That's
it was
great.
perfect. Yeah. My only
That's awesome.
reservation was I was like, can we see who owned the house? And I was like a little bit nervous that this was going to be, I don't know, somebody, a girl I had history with, a guy I didn't get along with, which I don't know if there was anybody I didn't get along with, but, some goofy history that I'd be like, wow. And it turns out I didn't know the person. He'd owned the house the whole time. And so that worked out well. But it's
That's
wild.
fun.
So I live in Kendallwood.
That's awesome. Back to your
Yeah,
roots.
a mile from where I grew up.
That's
And
neat.
yeah, so it's home. It's home. So how did you wind up in Texas?
Well, an interesting story. It depends on how deep we want to go. Texas has been part of my life. Well, my mom was born in Texas, and so I had family here. And there was a time in not high school, college, when I dated a guy, long distance for 3 years from Michigan to Texas. I was going to move to Texas in 1988 when I graduated from college. That didn't happen. The relationship, long distance is difficult. So the relationship didn't survive that. And then 15 years later, I landed up moving to Texas. And that was for a job with Lockheed Martin, which is huge aerospace company.
Right
But the
now I
funny part
remember.
is, yeah, is that my husband, and we were dating at the time, he wanted to move back to Texas because he's from Texas. And I said, well, I'd like to move out of Michigan because I don't like the cold, but I'm not ready to move across the country with you. So let's give it a little bit more time. 3 weeks after that conversation, I got a call from a former boss saying, I've got this great job for you. It's in Fort Worth, Texas. The
Oh
signs were
wow.
all there. It was just kind of funny. I laughed at it though and turned him down. I said, no, we're looking for a house and my boyfriend just got a new job. And so I turned it down. I told my now husband, boyfriend at the time, about that conversation that night, expecting that same laughter and sense of humor. And he didn't quite see that. He says,
Like
it could be a good job opportunity for you. Let's check it out. I'm licensed in Texas, him as a chiropractor. Let's at least see if it's a good job opportunity. And Lockheed Martin is huge. It was an amazing job opportunity for me. I wrote the curriculum to fly the Joint Strike Fighter jet. I worked with pilots and we wrote the entire structure of the curriculum on flying the jet. So it was pretty amazing.
that was the job you took down there?
That was the job I took.
Wow, that's a cool job.
Yeah,
That's a
it
cool
was
job.
definitely when my teenage nephews thought that Aunt Nancy had a wow job. That kind of said it right there that it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very
But it
cool.
was also corporate America. And so as with any job, there are pros and cons.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. I
But
work for
that
a big automotive company and pros and cons.
Yes, pros and cons. Yeah. And that's what got us here. So it was pretty amazing. Fort Worth is a really cool town.
So
It is a lot of fun.
do you wear cowboy boots and open carry a 6 shooter or
Cowboy boots, yes. 6 shooter, no. I do love my cowboy boots. I've got probably 5 or 6 different cowboy hats of different colors, and I have several different cowboy boots. My most favorite pair is black and purple. It's definitely not for the utility of it. It is absolutely fashion.
I think cowboy boots kind of are now, unless you're like riding western. I'm not sure what purpose they serve other than looking cool. And I have a pair. I haven't worn them in forever.
Well,
But
down in Fort Worth, you have a lot of people who wear them for their jobs because we definitely still are a cow town. So it's kind of funny. It's got both big industry, but then it still has the cow town part.
yeah, there's
There's the
business
phrase
people. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying there's the phrase that Fort Worth is where the West begins and Dallas is where the East peters out.
There you go. But there are people who wear nice cowboy boots with super nice suits, right?
Sure, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I've been to Houston once, and I'm sure they're very different cities in terms of city
They are very
personality and
different.
maybe local culture. But It was definitely Texas, no doubt about it. So,
Yeah, Texas is interesting. There are certainly some pros and cons and differences from growing up in the Detroit area. Huge differences. It's a great city and I love it, but it's still different than Michigan. Now, granted, I like the fact that I was out walking and it was beautiful today, and I know you got snow yesterday, so there is that part too.
well, today it's upper 50s and sunny. So the snow's
Nice.
melting. I was on the deck for a couple hours with the dogs and actually watching a podcast on my headphones, and that's April in Michigan, right?
Nice,
A
right?
week and a half ago was in the 60s. So,
We get that too. The ups and downs are absolutely incredible.
yeah, you have a little bit of a winter in Dallas, right? But,
We do in Fort Worth, though. You got to be careful with that. There's a big rivalry between Fort Worth and Dallas.
okay.
Um,
Well, clue me in.
yeah, we do. Well, it's Dallas is more pretentious. Now, let me get my words out. Pretentious, and Fort Worth is much more laid back. In Fort Worth, you never know if you're sitting next to a ranch hand or the person who owns the ranch. It's very friendly. It's very laid back. Dallas is more about money. It's a banking community, so there's definitely a difference there. Fort Worth says, you know, that we're the best kept secret and we like it that way. But we've become the 15th largest city, so we're not as good of a secret
Wow.
anymore. But there's certainly a rivalry. People in Dallas think the people in Fort Worth need to stay there. We joke around that when we go to Dallas, we better bring our passports so we can get back to Fort Worth.
Wow. Wow. I think most people wouldn't know that. So how does Austin play
Yeah.
into this? Isn't Austin very close too, or not?
Austin's about 3.5 hours away.
Oh,
So
why did I think
Dallas
that?
is 45 minutes away. So you get the DFW area, like the airport is right in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And that's why so many people lump Dallas and Fort Worth together because we're so close, although we're two independent and very separate cities. But Austin's about 3.5 hours away. Austin's a fun city. I think that Fort Worth is what Austin was maybe 20, 30 years ago. Austin's grown up really, really fast. And because of that, they've got a lot of traffic. Cost of living is a little bit higher, but it's still a great city. It's in the hill country. It's a beautiful part of Texas. And to relate it to areas of the Detroit area, it would kind of be like a Royal Oak, Birmingham, Ferndale mix.
So maybe Ann Arbor.
Yeah, kind of like that. I mean, it's a big college town, but Austin isn't just University of Texas, just like Ann Arbor is not just University of Michigan. So yeah, Ann Arbor would be a good match for it. It's fun. It's they have T-shirts, keep Austin weird, and keep that just that uniqueness that Austin has,
That's funny.
different from any other city in Texas.
That's funny. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So you're, did you say a wellness coach or a health coach?
A health coach, which really the same thing.
So that's one of the things I'm very intrigued by, right? Because that sounds like one of those jobs where it's do what you love and you never have to work another day in your life again type of job, which are elusive, I think, for most people. Is that the kind of job it is for you?
Yes, yes, and no. Yes, for that part of the job, but I do so much of the other business with being the CEO of our company, our chiropractic wellness company. So I have really several different hats that I wear. So I worked at Lockheed, as we talked about, and I got laid off, which is very common at Lockheed. And I was away from it for maybe 3 to 4 weeks when they called me back, and I realized that the stress there was greater than I wanted to work with. And so I didn't want to go back. And my husband and I started face to face, one on one, running our business together. So we were running it together, but my job was remotely. And then we started working hand in hand, side by side, day in and day out, and loved it and didn't want to go back to Lockheed. And at that time, it was only running the business, which is a huge job in itself. But what brought the health coaching in, to be honest, was a health issue that I had. And after my health issue, then I started researching everything I could do to save my own life. And then afterwards, I said, I've got to share this with everybody. And that's where the health coaching came in, because I wanted to share with the world everything I learned.
So is this kind of like uh, kind of a medical version of a social worker, or is it more like um, a one-on-one helping people through like personal interaction, like counseling kind of stuff, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, somewhere in between. I'll do presentations on health and wellness, but then I also will do one on one. And the one on one is coaching where we can talk about whatever areas of health that they need to focus on. You've got your mind, body, and spirit. And if one has turbulence, then none of them are going to be at peace because they're all collectively interlinked with one another. So it's just making sure, let's look at what areas of health and wellness need work for that particular person. It might be nutrition, it could be exercise, it could be the chiropractic aspect, it could be stress reduction. There are a lot of different factors that we need to look at for our health and wellness that are all connected.
So what were the three broad categories you said?
Well, there's the mind, body, and spirit.
Okay.
I have a an acronym, get on base, and base stands for, the B is breathe, which is reduce your stress. Act is activity, increase your activity, get your body aligned, and increase exercise. The S is smile, which is all attitude and gratitude focus.
Uh-huh.
And then the E is eat, which is nutrition.
Wow, that's cool. So,
Thank you.
Kit, to the extent you can extrapolate on that, that is what I would really like to hear about. To the extent you can talk about it at further length, because
Sure,
I
sure.
think that particularly with the schedules that people have adopted, particularly in the United States, but probably all over you know industrialized Western Europe, United States, Japan, and other countries that are highly industrialized. I think people have lost that. And I'm not sure there was ever really a conscious, this is how we need to be type of approach. I think people just did it, lost it, and now I don't think there's a lot of, and I try to do this not in any kind of formal way, but keep myself mentally sane and physically fit through, like you said, I try to eat well. I work out almost every day, and try to be
Yeah,
mindful of stress. And I have
great.
an incredibly stressful job, but try to manage that.
What tools do you use to manage it, Chris?
Um, I do, technically, it would be meditation. So getting myself to sleep every night, just like mindfulness meditation. Just I
Nice.
try to focus on breathing and literally the color black. If I can visually get my mind to black, it basically gets me to kind of like cognitive nothingness. And then if I can focus on breathing, it pulls your mind away from all the gears that might otherwise turn. And then I do one
Sure.
exercise. So once I've kind of settled myself down, I go through a physical relaxation, and this just takes a little more than a minute. And I go through, and this might seem weird, and I don't know if people really remember my accident and that I'm paralyzed, but I can, I have a weird, all paralysis is different. So I can actuate every muscle in my body. So what I do is I can do this little thing where I get my legs to move. So I go through five, they're not quadrants, so five, whatever the number five quadrant would be equivalent to. So I take my legs and I stress them all up as much as I can and take a deep breath and then let the breath and all the tension in the legs go. So I physically wind up my muscles. Take a deep breath, get real conscious of the fact they're wound up, and let it go. And then I do that for my torso, so I concentrate from my waist to my neck. And again, I take a deep breath, tighten all up, exhale, let it all go. Then I do the same thing, both arms, like from my fingers to my shoulders, tense them all up, concentrate on that, take a deep breath, let it go. Then I do the same thing for like neck and shoulders. And this one's like where I notice the most benefit. And it takes, for each of these, it takes 15, 20 seconds. So where you carry all the stress, in your neck and your
Sure.
traps and all that,
Yeah.
I tighten that all up, jam my head into my pillow, take a huge breath, let all that go. And then I take a deep breath and I try to, I don't try, I take the deep breath and I feel it in my head. I like basically feel my head fill up, and then the same thing. Hold it, let it go. And when I do that, I am physically so more much relaxed through a
That's great.
90-second exercise. So I get that, and then it's the blackness in the breathing. And once I get there, I usually can be asleep within 5 minutes.
That's wonderful. Oh, that's great. Yeah, those things are really important to be able to reduce our stress. Our stress, we don't realize how much it affects us. And it absolutely has an underlying component of our health and wellness. And it's kind of amazing. Yeah, my for me all of this started with breast
And,
cancer.
and alcohol.
And alcohol. Well, we all have to have our balances, right?
Right.
Right. So it started with breast cancer for me. I was diagnosed in 2011, and 2012 I went through a lot of surgeries, and it's really life changing. And you talk about putting things out there on Facebook and being brave with that poem. Maybe trying to remember, I got diagnosed in December. I think it was March when I put it out on Facebook, everything that I was going through. And I had decided that I wanted to be open about all of it. So that way I could help people that were going through similar circumstances and situations, whether it was cancer or a life threatening situation or just our normal stresses of life. So I was very, very open about that whole experience. And learning for me was all of this aspects of our mind, body, and spirit, and being able to let go of our stress and how much that affects our health and our nutrition. That's huge. With the food that we eat, we're either bringing ourselves towards health or sickness. One of the two. Food is medicine. So it's important for us to look at what is in our diet. I changed my entire diet through that experience. And it's kind of amazing everything that I learned about different food. I went through my cabinets and got rid of all of the processed food. I eat whole food. We cook most every night, and the restaurants that I go to will accommodate my needs. And my needs are looking at what's healthy and health and wellness, and taking certain ingredients out and adding other ingredients in to make it a healthier food. And the stress part of it, the meditation, like we're talking about, exercise is huge. All of these different things, like right now with what people are experiencing with COVID-19, one of the things it's doing is causing people to slow down. Like you mentioned earlier, Chris, about the fast pace of our society and where we're at. COVID-19 is actually causing a lot of people to slow down and maybe reassess. I'm hoping it causes people to reassess, because that stress factor is so tremendous. Our emotional standpoint is huge too. It's kind of unbelievable. Most life threatening illnesses have some emotional component. And until you clear that emotional component, then you still have to worry about that particular illness and really ridding your body of it if you don't get to the root causes. Here's the way I explain it. So, with cancer as an example, if you have a bunch of garbage in your body, and a rat comes in and infests that garbage, you can kill the rat. You can stab it through surgery. You can poison it through chemotherapy. You can burn it through radiation. But if you don't get rid of the garbage, then you're going to get another rat.
The rat's
So
coming
you've got
back.
to go to the root cause of what caused that in the first place and get rid of the garbage.
That's a great analogy.
Thank you.
That's a great
Yes.
analogy. So in your poem, there were a couple of things, and I think you answered the question. Didn't want to potentially put you on the spot, but a couple of places like the word "it" is capitalized, and you're clearly referring to either an event or some
Yeah.
larger thing that happened. Is that what that was?
Yes, that was
I'm
cancer.
presuming now. Okay,
Absolutely.
so that makes a lot of
Yes.
sense.
Absolutely. And you don't have to worry about putting me on the spot. I'm very, very open about that journey and everything that I went through with it. It's, as you can imagine, and you have your own life experience too, where it changes your life. You have the before and after line in your life, and everything afterwards is different. And it's a line in the sand, and everything's different. And then from that, you either learn and grow and become a version point two, which is better than you were, or you don't. And hopefully we do, that we have that line, and we, from the journey that we go, the challenges that we go through at the time, that we come out the other side a better person.
Yeah, I had my accident a long time ago. I lost my life partner to ALS less than a year ago.
So sorry.
Thanks. And I didn't. I came up with this rationale. Her name was Sherry. When Sherry passed away, people were like, "How are you doing?" And I thought this, but I never really put it into words and categories. We have three options. One is move on and make the best of it. The other is continue to live and don't make the best of it and slash live in misery. And the third option is literally just end it, like put a gun in your mouth and end it. And I think it's always best to opt for option one, right? Don't hasten
Yeah,
death because we're
absolutely.
all going to die. So that's a bad decision, period. So just set that one aside. It's just a bad decision. So if you're left with two options that aren't, I'm going to say ridiculously dramatic, but for people who, it's not ridiculous for people who have the problem. But anyway, so the two remaining options are make the best of it or don't. And don't be a victim. Don't be a victim, you know? Take charge of your life and make the best of it as you can. And even if that's mediocre, mediocre is better than hell, right?
Yes, indeed.
And
Indeed.
you made me think of one other thing, and I forgot what it was. Oh, if you had told me, and as I was thinking about, when you and I agreed 2 weeks ago we were going to do the podcast. I'm like, you know what? How well did I really know Nancy in high school? And I honestly, I don't remember. I don't know if I knew you. I mean, it's not like we spent a ton of time together. I think I had a
True.
pretty
True enough.
decent handle on who you were and are. You don't seem to have changed a lot. But where was I going with this? Oh, so if what made and makes me tick are a lot of physical, visual. I'm a very visual person. I'm very visually oriented. I'm very like motion oriented. And those were the things that kind of made and do make me tick. And when I had my accident, I lost a lot. So I have a very high spinal cord injury. So I have like very little trunk stability, and I lost all the dexterity in both my hands. So the two biggest things in my life were playing the guitar which
Mm,
few people knew about, and skiing, which all my friends knew about. And those both
yeah.
got just like taken away. So if you had told me, hey, at 26 years old, you're going to have a spinal cord injury, the guitar, the bass, all the piano, all instruments that you play almost daily are going away. Skiing's going away. You know, all kind of intense physical activities going away. I would have told you that as soon as I can get my hands on a bottle of pills or a gun in my mouth or whatever, and I would have told you this with 100% certainty. I would have said, don't even tell me I'm not going to do this. I would have told you as soon as I can do that, I'm blowing my brains out or shutting my organs down with drugs. And I remember waking up in the hospital, you know, the day after it happened. So not even 24 hours. My mom was sitting by my side. And I said to her, this will not define me. I had no idea what the future held other than I couldn't fuck it. I'm laying in a bed and I can't move. And I was like, this will not define me. This will not defeat me.
Good for you.
So it's about choices, you know. And it took me, and like I said, I would have told you with complete and utter certainty, I'm not I'm not moving on. No way. And in less than 24 hours at 26, and some of us are old and wise at 26, and some of us not so much. I think I was somewhere in between. It took me less than a day to make that decision. So I hope for people they have the resolve when bad things happen to make choices like I made and to make choices like you made.
Absolutely. And we never know until we're in that situation. As you laid that out very well, Chris. If you would have been told that beforehand, you're saying your reaction would have been completely different. But when it happened, then your reaction was resilience. But you didn't have that resilience if you were to imagine a situation like that. It was only when that situation confronted you that you had that resilience and that strength to say, no, I won't let it define me. I won't let it defeat me, which is pretty incredible because you can't imagine these things. You try to imagine it and you think you're going to respond in a completely different way. Sometimes we think we're going to respond better than we do, and sometimes we think we're going to respond worse than we do.
That is a fact. That's a big fact.
And good for you in the way that you responded. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's incredible.
Well, when people say that, one of the things I think about and one of the comments I make is, and here's something that bugs me is like, if you have a catastrophic accident like I did, or if you're, I don't know, come out of the closet, if you pick anything that's very abrupt. I was like an instant hero because I broke my neck. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not a hero. I broke my neck. I'm just a guy who's living life and getting through my problems. I'm like, yeah, but it's very, I'm like, no, it's not heroic. A guy who goes into a burning building the second time, that's heroic. The first time's just reaction. And then you're like, fucking hey, I could have died. The second time is heroic. And it really bugs me when they make instant heroes out of somebody who faces adversity and comes out decently on the other side. We're not heroes. We're not heroes. We're just people who have choose to move on with life. And where I'm going with this is I attribute the degree that I've dealt with this, if you want to call it successfully, or however you might label it, as ultimately selfish. I don't want to have a shitty life. And for me, this is all about me. I don't want to have a shitty life. So I'm going to do everything I can that's within my power to have good minutes, hours, days, months, years, right? And stack them on top of
Right.
each other. It's not heroic. I'm not doing this for anybody but me. I mean, I might be doing it for my family a little bit indirectly or maybe slightly directly, because you don't want to burden them, but I'm doing this for me, you know? I, anyway. So,
I think
so
I think It's a ripple effect. So you're doing it for you, but then it becomes a ripple effect for other people.
For sure. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be a burden on anybody. Um, but again, that's not what drove me to make the decisions I made. That,
Sure.
the decision, this will not define me. I decided that for me, not because I was at that time worried about other people. I was worried about me.
Sure.
So again, just the instant, anybody, the instant you're a hero, not necessarily. And you make a really good point because people have said to me, I couldn't do what you do. And my response to them is always, and I don't, you obviously get it because you said it. You don't know that. You don't
Right.
know that. I'd have told you I would have killed myself with 100% certainty. And I didn't. And so don't tell me you know. Because I thought I knew, and then it actually, something happens and you deal with it, and then you know. Once
Then
it's
you know.
happened and you've got the set of facts, the realities, and the reactions, then you know. So that's a huge thing. So, if I might ask, once you dealt with your breast cancer, were you cancer free and then chose to live better, or were you not cancer free and you're like, holy shit, I got to find some other way to deal with it?
Well, it's kind of interesting how we define cancer free. So the cancer was removed from my body. I had a single mastectomy, and then I had a single mastectomy. Well, I had single mastectomy twice. So I had one mastectomy, and they found a surprise cancer in the post pathology report. That so we have this one cancer that we knew was there, and then there was this surprise cancer we didn't know was there. So how do we know that the other breast, the right side, is clean? Because we can continue to do more reports and more scanning, but that cancer hid from all of the scans that we did to start. So the only way to find out whether or not the right side was clean was really to remove that breast. So I did that. Everything was good. So I continued down this road. I didn't do chemotherapy, which was probably one of the biggest decisions and choices I've ever made in my life. Um, Radiation was never a part of my treatment plan, so that wasn't even on the table. But Western medicine is, how to describe this? Um, they'll remove the cancer and then you're done. You can do some hormonal, because mine was a hormonal cancer. You can do some hormonal blockers and things of that sort, but then you're pretty much done. They don't have a test in our country to determine what circulating cancer stem cells are in your bloodstream. I send my blood to Greece for that test because we don't
Oh,
have it here. So in sending my blood to Greece, then I get to really find out where am I at with the circulating cancer stem cells. And I needed to bring those down. They were higher than I wanted them to be. I changed, as I said, I changed my diet because it's all about recurrence at this point. So, yeah, the tumor is gone and the cancer is gone, but there are these circulating stem cells that are trying to find a home and create a new blood supply and create a new tumor. And those are the things that you want to stop. And our country, again, doesn't have a way of checking the pulse on that, whereas other countries do. So you see what's in your bloodstream and you want to reduce those. And that's where you get into the diet and exercise and gratitude focus and reducing your stress and all of those things. What I found interesting, though, is that my test results kept on going, kind of like this. I didn't have a big drop, but I didn't have a big increase either. So it was kind of a standard deviation on my test results in Greece. And the one thing that started dropping my test results is when I dealt with emotional issues. And that was profound. It was kind of incredible. The only thing that I did different between these two particular tests, it was called an EVOX. EVOX is it's a voice mapping to get rid of the emotional imprints from your ancestors. So we know that we have genetic imprints from our ancestors, But people don't look at the emotional aspect. It's a new study that's starting to come out. It's a new field, epigenetics, where people are really looking at what type of emotional imprints do we get from our relatives. And this system looks at that. It looks at your family tree, and you work with your grandparents and your parents and your siblings, your spouse, yourself. For me, cancer; for you, it would be your accident. So you look at those aspects and clear that emotional point. And that's when my test results really plummeted, which was
So
fantastic.
that makes total sense. But the one thing, how does how do you map that against your relatives?
So there's a computer program, and it measures your voice. So it's voice mapping, and it measures it based on emotion. So let's say they start me out saying mom, 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 and it maps my voice and ties it to emotions. It's kind of phenomenal because you think, oh, I'm in a great mood. I'm saying my mom's name with love and vim and vigor, but but you don't know what that is actually going to read on the computer program, which is designed for the what imprints emotionally did I get from my mom or my dad or my grandmother, the different close immediate family members.
So you literally say the names of the people in your family,
Yes.
and the computer looks at the tones and whatever else it looks at, almost like a lie detector, I would presume,
Yeah,
and
kind of like that.
and
And it maps it
establishes.
to an emotion.
Wow.
And then you identify what that emotion is, and then you start thinking about that person. We'll continue with the mom. So you map it to that person, and then you think about what your mom may have gone through, why that emotion that she had may have imprinted on you. And they have frequencies. You put your hand on a device, and that device sends frequencies into you to help you clear that emotion. And then you also do some self-talk. The person who's uh, running the session, so the person who's certified, that person will leave the room. At least when I did it, she would leave the room. I would have these glasses that I would put on that would flash lights, and I'd have my hand on a device that would give me frequencies. I'd have music on headphones, and then I would go through some self analyzing conversation to try and change that emotional component. And then she'd come back in, test me again. I'd do the voice mapping to see, did it clear? If it didn't, then we go through another session like that until I was able to clear whatever that emotion was. And I know it sounds really out there, but every chronic illness has an emotional component to it. And
Nothing sounds out there to me, just so you know.
I mean, it was kind of amazing when that was the only thing. There were two things that were different between those two testings I did in this particular time. And this was 4 years into doing this testing. The only two things that were different, one was doing, I think, 8 sessions of that evox and voice mapping and working on that emotion. And the other one was realizing that fear was a driving force for all of the changes I had made in my life about cancer. That I made all these great positive changes, but I did it because I was fearful of getting cancer again. And once I realized that fear was the driving force, I needed to get fear out of the driver's seat and really look at that positive emotion and put the positive emotion in the driver's seat. That I'm not fearful of getting cancer again. I'm going to live my life. As you said, it's not going to define me, it's not going to defeat me. I'm going to flourish and thrive in spite of it and move fear away. So, those were the only two things I changed. And my test results literally had the biggest drop they had had in I believe it was 4 or 5 years since I started.
So, so the focus is move away from fear of getting cancer and/or getting cancer and ultimately dying, and getting healthy because of all the positive benefits to that. And I know it's more complicated than that, but to just
Well,
sum it up, at a
The evox had nothing to do with the fear. That was just a side thing I was working on at the same time.
uh-huh.
The voice mapping and working on the epigenetics with my family, that was all about getting rid of emotional imprints from other people.
But where I'm going with
So,
this is, a lot of it is perspective, right? So,
sure, absolutely.
glass half full, glass half empty, right? So rather than being focused on, I don't want to die, you focus on, I want to live and I want to live well. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
crux of it?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to live. I want to live well. And so I'm not going to change my diet and my lifestyle because I don't want to die. I'm going to change my diet, my lifestyle because I want to live.
Right.
And when you realize that you change your diet and your lifestyle and all of those different factors, you realize that driving force is fear. Then you don't realize, you didn't know until that realization that that undercurrent was negative in your subconscious psyche. And so you need to change the undercurrent to be positive. So that was one aspect. And then the other aspect was dealing with that emotional imprint. Like we say, well, we get heart disease. We have heart disease in my family. So that's a genetic disposition. So we look at the physical genetic disposition, but we also need to look at an emotional genetic disposition that we have the ability to change, just like we have the ability to change heart disease too. That our genes and our DNA is, it's moving, it's fluid, and we have the ability to change that based upon our thoughts, our actions, and how we live our life.
That's really very interesting and very cool. So going back to, I don't want to spend too much time on this and bore people, but so going back to where you did the testing, I forget what you called it, and where you did like you focused on your mom. So
Yeah.
did you do this kind of in silos to begin with? So where, say, that was a stressor, then did you work through that and then move on to the rest of the family? Or,
Yeah, yeah, you work with the whole family. So she starts out with your family tree. And in this particular person, I'm sure every practitioner who does this might be a little bit different. But the one that I worked with, she worked with my grandparents first, and then my parents, and then my siblings, and my spouse, and me, and cancer. And
that's
you work through
really
each
interesting.
person before, and you didn't move on to the next person until you had cleared whatever that emotion was and were in more of a positive space. And once you were in that positive space with that person, then you moved on to the next person.
Does this type of approach have its own like name? Is it a
It's
thing?
evox, evox,
Okay, you said that. Okay.
evox, and it's through voice mapping that they're able to find out what that emotional imprint is from that particular family member, and then you work through it both mentally, emotionally, but then also through frequencies, that you put your hand on a device and that device brings frequencies, positive frequencies to you. As we all know, there's frequencies, it's energy that we put out. You can always tell if there's been a fight when you walk into a room. You can tell if a fight just happened because you can feel that energy in the room.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
And so we draw people to us that have the same energy. Birds of a feather flock together. All of these different uh, common cliches, but it's absolutely true that we are drawn to that same energy and that frequency. People say you think positive, you put positive out there, you get positive back. And it's the same thing in this point, that it's that frequency that is being put back into you that helps you clear these negative emotions. So it's positive frequencies that you're gaining to be able to help clear these negative emotions.
That is really interesting. And I'm surprised. I've never heard of that. That's that's even more interesting to me.
I was told through the doctor that I work with that sends my blood to Greece. They're the ones that told me about it. They said, let's look at this emotional component, because I wasn't getting the drop in numbers that I needed. And so I went through that. And once I got the drop in numbers that I needed, he said, you got out of your own way. And that's part of it, is that with a life threatening illness, part of it comes from some type of an emotional component. So to help us get rid of that garbage, as we spoke of earlier, you get rid of the garbage, you go to the root cause of the illness, you have to address the emotional part. It's not just physical, it's emotional too.
Yeah, people don't realize, stress and just mental well-being has a lot to do with our physical ability to heal ourselves
Absolutely.
in a huge way. In a huge
Huge.
way. Because if you have a
No
high-level
question.
spinal cord injury like I do, you, health complications can present themselves in so many different ways. So
Sure.
taking care of yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, and again through diet and all this stuff, exercise and is huge. You know,
Huge.
yeah, I learned something fairly recently. So I had my accident in '92, so coming up on 28 years. 50% of people who have spinal cord injuries don't live 10 years,
Wow.
which is crazy. And when I learned that, I was
Crazy.
like, holy shit, I'm glad I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I was just thinking that. Isn't it better you didn't know that?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because I'd have been like, fuck, it's 9 years and 6 months. Uh oh.
Shit. Self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yeah.
That's why I
Yeah.
think it's crazy when they tell people, cancer survivors, you have X number of days, months, years, or whatever, and they start putting numbers on it, because doctors are just guessing with those numbers. But then what it does to the psyche is huge, because
Yeah.
you've got that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Don't share that
Yeah.
info. Don't share that
Yeah,
info.
better to know it in retrospect, and you're like, well, gosh, I'm glad I'm well beyond that, so I don't need to worry about
Right. And
those
it was
stats.
really encouraging because I'm like, all right, so I must be doing some things well, knock on wood, right?
Yeah, I'm
And we're
just gonna
right.
keep on doing it.
Yeah. Wow, that's
Yeah,
really, really, really
great.
interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
So explain to me a little bit more about the blood process and the fact why Greece of all countries and why don't we do that here?
The why we don't do that here is all about FDA. It's not FDA approved. The doctor that is in Greece tried to get it FDA approved, and that didn't happen. And so he runs out of Greece, and he works with doctors here who send the blood to Greece. So I personally have never been to Greece, but my blood has been there countless times. And it's
Okay.
kind of bizarre, because not only does it measure the circulating cancer stem cells in my bloodstream, it also, they have tests that put supplements against the cancer that was in my body, and measure what supplements kill cancer in my bloodstream for me. And they also measure chemotherapy agents. So they measure a whole variety of things to see what works for me individually in killing cancer and keeping good cells, but killing cancer cells. So
So
I get a whole list of supplements that help to kill cancer for me, with percentages and how effective they are. It's
so do
pretty,
they just
pretty
do
incredible.
they look at blood and compare it against a bunch of data they already know? Or are they doing cultures with your blood? How does that work?
They're looking at my actual blood, not data they know, but what are the stem cells within my blood? What's the density of stem cells? in my blood. And then that, and they've got, tables on that. Where is it okay? Where do you need to be? Where do you need to go to for your chance of recurrence being less and less and less?
And so for the 5 or 50 things they look at, are there correlations between how you treat whatever a trend is with that particular stem cell, or is it something where they do a further test on that, and then there's a prescription, for lack of a better way to put it, unique to you?
Well, the stem cells within the bloodstream that they look at, that is unique to me. That is what is the concentration of cancer in my blood. So that is very unique, and that's just the data based on me. And the other aspect of testing that you can do, where they're looking at supplements and chemotherapy agents or pharmaceuticals, how effective is this for you? How how does turmeric, as an example, how effective does turmeric kill cancer cells in your bloodstream? And it can be 0% up to 100% effective. So it really looks at, for you, we put your blood in a dish, because at that point it's in a dish, and we put these agents against it,
Okay.
these supplements against it, and how effective was it for your body with that particular cancer that you had?
Okay. So they're working directly with your, they're not looking at correlations and applying
Right. They're looking directly with my
statistical
blood.
processes. They're looking at your
Yeah.
blood and actually
Yes.
doing cultures or whatever they call it, and then saying,
Exactly.
this is what works with your blood.
Correct.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Is that really expensive?
Yes. Yes, it
Yeah,
is really expensive,
I'd figure.
but absolutely worth it. You look at, there's a pharmaceutical called tamoxifen, and tamoxifen is used for people who are premenopausal and have hormone positive cancer. So I took tamoxifen for 2.5 years. I tried to stay away from pharmaceuticals as much as possible. As I said, I didn't do chemotherapy, but this was the one that they said was really going to help me. So I took it for 2.5 years. I got it tested in Greece, and the results came back that it was only 3% effective for me. Well, 3% effective is not worth all of the side effects that can come from that drug. And when I mentioned to my oncologist about that 3% effectiveness, she said, tamoxifen works on some of the people, some of the time, but we don't know who is who, so we prescribe it to everybody. And that was eye opening to me, because the side effects are huge, including death, including other cancers that you can get from a drug to stop recurrence of the cancer you had. One of the side effects is that you can get other cancers from it. So the side effects are huge. The pain, the it's I mean, I could go through a list of the different side effects of tamoxifen. For some people, it's the right choice if it has a high percent of effectiveness. But since our country doesn't have that test, most people won't know that, and they'll take it because their doctor told them to take it. Once I tested it and found out it had 3% effectiveness for me, I stopped taking it.
Right.
I'm done. It's not worth it.
Wow. Wow, wow.
The
Somebody really
vitamin
close.
C IVs were better for me than tamoxifen.
Yeah,
So it's amazing.
somebody close to me has chronic Lyme disease, and I hear, they're altogether different, but at the same time, very similar stories. Where Western medicine just has a shotgun approach, and this is what works for most people, and bam, take
Right.
this and go away, kind of thing.
We actually work with Lyme disease patients in our clinic. We had a patient that was going to go to Germany, and they were going to do an experimental treatment on her. And I think it was stem cell transplant for her for Lyme's disease. But they said to her, before you come to Germany to do this procedure, you need to get an atlas orthogonal chiropractic adjustment. The atlas is the very top bone in the spine. And with it being the top bone in the spine, right at the brainstem, C1, it's amazing, as through your experience, I'm sure that you know what I'm speaking of, because it's right at the brainstem. If it's out of position, it can have an effect on any system in your body. So this person in Germany that she was going to go see recommended that she find somebody who does work with the Atlas and who is certified to do those adjustments. She found us. Um, my husband's the only board certified Atlas orthogonist in North Texas. There are only 300 in the world that do this treatment. She never needed to go to Germany because she got such amazing results from the work at our clinic for Lyme disease that she never needed to do that second step and go to Germany.
So, did this adjustment like um, increase an autoimmune response, or
It
what did
increased
it?
an immune response, not autoimmune, but
Or
an immune
okay, an
response.
immune response. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Wow.
increased your immune response.
So why wouldn't
And
everybody get this adjustment just for the purpose of
indeed,
you're going to be a hell of a lot better
we ask
off?
that question every day. A
Okay.
lot of people don't know about it. So it's just people understanding and people knowing what's out there. And that's absolutely why wouldn't everybody get that? Because it's incredible when you look at if your body is impinged and if any part of your spinal cord is impinged and you adjust the atlas, which is right at that brainstem again, then it can help the entire body, not only your spinal structure, but if you think about your spinal cord and your nervous system, if part of it's impinged, then you can have misfire anywhere down your system.
Right.
So you remove the interference and you let the body heal itself. The body is an amazing piece of machinery designed for harmony.
Wow, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah, because your brain and your body, if they don't work together, you're disconnected altogether.
Absolutely.
So I mean, that would have other ancillary benefits, right? I mean, I would think like you'd have physical benefits and like it would increase maybe or tweak athletic ability and I mean,
Oh,
literally
yes.
anything below the brain that your brain controls should theoretically improve, right? To a degree.
Well, even the brain. And here's the tough part, because with chiropractic care, we have to be careful on what we can say and can't say. So I have to be very careful in my phraseology and how I say these things. So we work with patients that have neurological issues and they get adjusted and they go away. We don't cure it. The body heals itself. We Dr.
Wow.
Michlin, my husband, he adjusts the atlas, lets the body heal itself. But some of the things that we've seen happen from that, migraine headaches have gone away. People with fibromyalgia have been able to decrease their pain levels exponentially. People with MS, as you mentioned, athletic abilities. We have seen people. We had one guy who came to our clinic recently who couldn't bend over to tie his shoes because he was having lower back issues. We start with the Atlas, and people are saying, wait, I'm having these lower back issues. Why are you starting with the Atlas? Well, after that, and after his treatment at our clinic, he decided he wanted to do a natural bodybuilding competition. I mean, here's this guy who couldn't bend over, and then he was able to do a bodybuilding competition. And I don't remember where he scored, but he was very high in his scoring. We had this one woman who came in who does taekwondo, and she got clocked in the head. She lives in right outside of New Orleans, and she came to our clinic. Now she's known Dr. Michlin for a long time. She's known my husband for a long time. They've been friends, but she would come in, drive or fly for treatment at our clinic. And he said, I don't want you competing for a year. She's like, what? A year? What? But once she got the treatment, she was able to expand her repertoire of areas that she could compete in. And instead of doing regional competitions, she was then able to do national and worldwide competitions. Pretty amazing. And she says it's all because of that work. Once you get your body aligned, and there are athletes that talk about this too, once you get your body aligned, then you're going to be able to work to your optimal capabilities. So you look at that aspect: immune system, digestion, hormonal response, mental clarity, sleeping, all of these things where it's brain and body and brain communication.
Wow. That's really interesting and make intuitively makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. Um, wow. Wow, wow. Huh. Um, you got my gears
Yeah,
turning
that's
on that.
something where I wish that you lived here because I'd want to see where your injury was and what we could do to help you. I mean that
Yeah, so just real quickly, we don't want to bore people, but I had a C6 dislocation and it went downwards,
okay,
so which is a
sure,
good direction, right? So
absolutely,
so it was a C6-7 and more like a C7 spinal cord injury. And then I had a
sure.
fusion. I had a fusion and some stainless steel. They fused C6 and C7. So it's funny though. One of the things they said was stay away from chiropractors. And this is almost 30 years ago when I was in rehab.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah,
like, especially they're like, don't have adjustments above your injury level because they could really fuck you up. And I was like, okay.
sure. And that's somebody who doesn't know about the atlas orthogonal work too, because I can see that with other chiropractors because I wouldn't trust somebody to twist the neck who doesn't know what they're doing. The atlas orthogonal adjustment is literally a tap behind the ear. I mean, it's a percussive force. If you've played pool before, which I'm assuming by the pool table that you have in front of you or that you're leaning on, that you have. So our example of that is when you have two balls that are touching one another and you hit the cue ball into the first ball and the first ball hardly moves, but the second ball takes that energy and moves. The atlas orthogonal adjustment works on that same precision and percussive force.
Yeah, for sure. It's
So,
going to be a crescendo down your entire cord.
well, yeah, but and that part is true. But the actual adjustment, you have a canister, and in the canister is a weight, and that weight is like the cue ball, and it drops down and it hits the stylus, which is behind your ear, and that stylus is like the first ball. It hardly moves; it's vibrational energy,
Uh huh.
and your atlas is like the second ball, moves in the direction that we want it to go. It's that gentle. We have children that say it tickles and adults say that's it because it's that gentle using that truly that vibrational force. And the pool table is the perfect example to really understand how that percussion moves and moves the atlas in the position that we want it to go.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So are you adjusting the head on C1 or just C1 in its own area or how's that work?
Well, the first thing, and I'm not adjusting, so I have my husband, um, he adjusts C1. And once C1 starts holding, because there's muscle memory, so you have to retrain those muscles. So once it starts holding, then he'll look at the entire spine and adjust the entire spine. But just in adjusting C1, it's amazing at the full body because we're built from the top down. And if you adjust C1, you will get shifts and movements down your entire spine, as you just called out a minute ago. That's exactly right. Because if C1 is out of place, you don't see people walking around with their head tilted to one side. We need our eyes and our ears level with the horizon. So when our body compensates for that, then we can have a high shoulder, a high hip, and a short leg. And that can cause problems down the entire spinal column.
Huh. I
Yeah,
would
it's pretty
imagine that,
fascinating.
yeah, I would imagine the way you described it, as would be the case to lesser and lesser degrees as you go down each vertebrae. Is that fair?
No, it's really, you will
No?
get an entire response. We have people who are having lower back issues and sciatica issues, and we will adjust their atlas first and before we do any lower spinal work. And it's absolutely amazing. Someone will say, like one guy, here's a really good example. He couldn't feel his left leg for years. And he talked about that. He came in, he told my husband, I can't feel my left leg. One atlas adjustment. He comes in the next day and he says, I'm really angry at you. And my husband's like, well, why are you angry? Because my left leg is killing me. And Chris looks at him and he said, well, that's great news. And he said, what do you mean it's great news? He said, well, you haven't felt your left leg for years. And now you can feel it. That means your body is healing. You
Right.
didn't expect to come back feeling like roses, but you can feel it and your body is healing. And that
Right.
was one adjustment. And he had that difference.
Right. And pain's your friend anyway, but that's a whole nother conversation with the guy.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Pain's one of our best. Hey, you got to fix something here.
Well, that's exactly it. When we look at the pharmaceutical industry, if you blindfold yourself and you stop the pain, then you don't know what's really going on in your body. Pain is your guide.
Right.
You're absolutely right. Pain is your friend, it's your guide. It tells you when to stop and stop pushing.
Right. And where to fix stuff.
Exactly.
Right. So, yeah.
Exactly.
But in Western medicine, we just want to treat the symptom. So here, make the pain go away, take these
Right.
drugs and go away. Or you're
Right.
fine,
That's
right?
exactly it. Right. Exactly. Whether it's through pain or even, as I mentioned earlier, with cancer, we're just looking at symptoms. Cancer is a symptom of a broken down immune problem. It's not the cause. It's not the source. It is just a symptom of a broken down immune problem, and you need to fix the immune system. Not that, and I'm not saying you don't need to get the cancer out of the body. Of course, you need to get the cancer out of the body. Do that first, but then look at the broken down system in your body that brought the cancer to you in the first place.
Right. Get rid of the rat food.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
Wow.
it's
Well,
pretty
this
amazing.
this took a direction I wasn't anticipating, but that's good. That's good. Good podcasts go in directions that you didn't anticipate. Well, we're over an hour. You want to keep going?
Well, we could talk forever, right, Chris?
Yeah. Well,
This
you
is
and I
great.
could. The thing about the hour is, if people are interested,
Yeah,
they tend to run out of time and patience for you.
true, true. I understand.
So if you want, I try to have a hard stop at an hour.
I
We
got you.
could we could call it an evening and do another one in a month or two, and we'll
Let's do
be
that.
in some place different, and probably the conversation will go down some other rabbit hole.
I'm for it. Let's do it.
All right,
Awesome.
cool. All right, let's call this a wrap. This has been a great conversation. This has been
I've
very
enjoyed it too.
informative for me and everybody who watches it. So I'll
Awesome.
connect with you offline, and we'll
Cool.
review it, and then if we're both comfortable, we'll post the thing up and educate some people.
All right, that sounds great, Chris. A lot of fun and great connecting with you. I also thought about how much did we talk in high school and had the same similar thoughts that you had that you expressed at the beginning. Thinking we probably have talked more in the last month than we did through all of high school. So this
Yeah,
has been
probably.
really
Yeah.
fantastic. I've enjoyed it.
All right. All right. Well, cool. Thanks. I'm going to
Thank you.
give us our little. I'll fade me out first. Fade you out second. I will give us some tunes here,
Perfect.
and this is the wrap.
All right,
All
I'll do
right.
my
Cool,
dance.
Nancy. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. It was awesome.
Bye.
Bye bye.